about one of the things that the DIA does before we go into the working groups. We're going to have 3 slots on the working groups that George showed before. But one of the aspects that we are doing, and I'm very happy to talk about this, is what we call matchmaking. The DIA, in a way, George presented this in the objectives before, is in a way a dating agency. And we do a little bit of dating services and matchmaking services indeed, that I want to talk about, in particular one specific one that we are launching, a little bit soft launching these days. So matchmaking, why are we doing matchmaking? You see again the structure here, and if you think about what many of you do, like I do right now, writing proposals for public funding, there's not just, a lot of you know SMS, JU, but then we also have it starts again this funny.
I think it's the battery.
That could well be. You're right. Off you go. And we take the stick again. Yes, it is better now. Good.
The other one.
Yeah, I got it. So a lot of these funding initiatives are very much split, right? And what we're offering as a service is to bring DIA members together in order to spawn ideas as to what it is we could be doing. And we've done this actually actively already towards publicly funded efforts. And we've done this in 2 activities this year already. We created 2 proposals that were at the core developed by DIA members, and they developed into separate consortia that actually bid into publicly funded, into 2 of the buckets, Horizon Europe and SNS, and we intend to increase that, potentially even with the DIA taking a more active role. The DIA could, for instance, be part of consortia itself. We are a legal entity, so we can do that. And that's in plan for next year. But actually, what I wanted to more talk about is what I call the open challenge. We always talk in the very beginning that we do matchmaking between public funds, but also between private funds. And the Open Challenge Fund is that private fund idea. And as I said, has been the dots have all been crossed and properly set. The board has recently approved the actual rules for running this, and I wanted to bring this to you. It's going to launch as web pages very soon, so you can actually read all of this on our website. It's not entirely available, so this is really exclusive. So what we intend to do, we utilize private funding to facilitate collaboration between industry and innovative SME and academic members. So we complement the identified public funding you saw before with these private funds, right? And it's aligned with the DI purpose. If you look at the Articles of Association, I highlighted these are joint R&D activities, it's advancing the state of the art. We have particular focus areas like sustainability, AI. So it's well aligned in what we are meant to be doing. This is cited out of the Articles of Association, if you wonder. So this is the official purpose of the association. It's all well aligned, that's good. And the way this is meant to work is that industry members of the DI propose challenges, problems they have, and align the work that has been done towards the challenges with the requirements and problems they actually face. So it's relevant, it's great, and that's what a lot of academic researchers want. They want to work on things that industry says, we have an issue with this, right, and we need a solution. So that's great, industry can do that, and then solicits researchers to actually address and solve those challenges. That's the idea, right? The DIA links those challenges usually to a working group, so it's kind of like it shouldn't be entirely out there and nothing exists. So hopefully it's linked to a working group, to an activity that we're having, so there's some relevance there, right? So that it fits into the current charter of work that we're having. The focus areas may be defined. You see this later in one of the working groups. It could be about routing, it could be about AI. All of these activities exist, and that's where the challenges are being linked into. We have defined, this is all written in slightly more boring legal language. We have actual bylaws you will be able to download soon and read this through. But I highlighted the key issues. The applicant must be a part of the DIA as a full or associate member. It's also a little bit an incentive to drive potential applicants into the DIA, right? So that's a little bit sticking the carrot out there for people to come and join the academy. It's applicable to SMEs or academic and research organizations. So industry sponsors, which are large companies, usually are not proposing funding for other industry members. Right? So it's SMEs and academic. The requirement, it serves as an enticement to join the DI. I mentioned this already. The applicant has to have a self-directed research position. That's usually whatever, in which system you're working in as an academic, a lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, etc. Or equivalent. The applicant must show support, so your employer should obviously support this. This is usually the case when you apply for public funding as well. You need to get endorsement of your organization to apply. You need to do the same here. You usually run this through your research office, for instance, right? And the applicant's organization must agree to not apply more than 10%. So similar to the EU, we put an overhead, but it's only 10%, right? So all of you who do public funding proposals, this is normal stuff. It's just written slightly different the way we want this, right? And what we will publish soon is what is it you actually all need to write. So let me quickly go through this. It's usually the name of the project, applicant name, that's the normal CV. You must have an executive summary that outlines how you intend to do the actual challenge, why do you seek to address it, etc. The actual proposal, around 5 pages, is fairly short. So if you're ever used to EU proposals, that's nothing compared to that. A bit of literature review so that we know that you kind of understand the problem area, problem statement, the actual expected outcome, and the expected impact of the way you choose to solve the problem. A timeline of tasks, which is being provided by the DI office once you inquire about this, and the actual budget. So how do you intend to spend the money that is being solicited? I come to the money now, the money is on the table. As well as the institutional agreement letter. That's all very similar. Again, if you apply for public funding or for open call funding, or what you do there in terms of things. How does the funding look? The proposer, which is the industry members, assigns or indicates a level of funding. And we have different buckets, 25, 50, 60K, 100K, 200K. These are certain amounts of time you can buy. 60K is a rough going rate for 6 months of work, 100K is roughly a year, 200K is 2 years. That's roughly how it translates to. Again, if you've done public funding, you kind of know this. But that amount is obviously given by the sponsor. We're willing, this is the challenge, and we're putting 60K, 6 months of work behind this. The actual organization, the sponsor organization, however, provides a sponsorship to the DIA. So as an applicant, you are being contracted by the DIA, not by the industry sponsor. So the DIA plays the intermediary in all of this. That's why it runs through the office. It gives a little bit of more work for the office to do, but it decouples the relationship from the direct industry sponsor. The DIA is the one that contracts the recipient, the one that finally won the challenge, and the deliverables are open results. The bylaws mandate that deliverables and the results will all be open, and that also allows that if potentially to have sponsorship agreements with the sponsors. That would be donations, but that's a small detail. The copyright of the deliverables are retained by the DIA. The IP is retained by the applicant. So any IP you may be generating is retained by you, but the document that you're generating is going to be copyrighted by you. So somebody is not bluntly copying it without any reference, right? That's the reason why we're doing this. There it is, the IP was retained. Now, how is the actual matchmaking done? So we have the industry sponsor that says this is that much money on the table, that is the topic. We have a selection committee that will review and approve the challenges in the first place. So once an industry member comes with money and challenges, the challenges will be reviewed and approved for solicitation. Right? And it will then be published on the website, which you will see soon for the initial challenges, as a so-called DIA challenge, probably with a small, nice little call identifier so that it's identifiable. The selection committee consists of DRA members. It's appointed by the DRA board, usually for about 12 months. The DRA members, and those of you who are members of the DRA, you remember that I solicited names of people recently who would be willing to serve at the selection committee. That is the selection committee, what I asked for. And the board finally approves the selection committee. The selection committee itself will be published on the website as well. Everything will be open so that applicants can review that, usually after 1 year. So let me give you an example of how that looks. And we are at a stage where we have 5 challenges that are meant to be published that are funded by Huawei as the first industry member who agreed to sponsor. This is an example, and this is how it's kind of roughly written on a web page and in a text format. This is about enhancing overall network throughput on the mix per packet and per flow load balancing traffic. Those of you who work, the reason I picked that is because I work in load balancing. I understand that challenge. The other ones I understand, but that one I found more interesting. So this is about load balancing, and it's trying to find the balance between the 2 approaches that you actually have out there in the solution space, between per packet and per flow. You have an actual challenge description. It repeats that. That's actually what I wrote in the title. A bit of background, this is based in the data center networking, so you want to look at intelligent status computing services, microservices in a data center, and to perform load balancing between the actual microservice instances. And instead of using a per flow mode, which creates stickiness, you want to move to a per packet flow, per packet approach. And how do you do that? Through per packet spraying that could distribute the traffic more effectively. That's part of the challenge, right? The technical challenge there is really to develop an actual optimal solution, or at least show to what extent it is optimal, that involves both per packet and per flow balancing. So it combines the 2 of them. That's possible, and we can talk in the coffee break of how that is possible. And the proposed algorithm should be able to adapt to network changes, which is part of the challenge to show that it, of course, does, and to have at least 90% of the individual either per packet or per flow performance. It is 6 months because it's for 60K, so that's the usual going rate, roughly. You can see if you look at EU open cores, it's usually what you find. 60K is roughly 6 months, so we align ourselves there. And the sponsor is Huawei. The sponsors are always obliged to name a principal researcher that would be the link. That's another thing we want to do in the matchmaking, not just match an industry member with an applicant, but also match faces, which means there's actually a former colleague of mine, David Liu, who would be the principal researcher, who would then be linked to an applicant once the challenge is won. What will happen soon is that our website, after the approval to the board, will have an easier readable version, roughly around what I had before, than the bylaws. You can also download the bylaws if you want to knock yourself out. This is 7 pages of rather legal text, but there will be a slightly more readable version in web pages that outlines how to apply, who will at that point be in the selection committee, so you can peruse through the names that have been appointed, how you could apply to this fund, and of course what the challenges are. So all the challenges will be described in a relatively simple form so that you can decide which of the challenges you would like to apply to. If you have any questions to the process, use the normal office email that you know, pops out in my mailbox. I can answer any questions that you may have procedurally. It's a soft launch. We learn from this as well. So we want to publish this and see how acceptable this is. How do we need to sharpen the language, etc. But it's a great opportunity for researchers to really come closer to industry problems, because all of those challenges are proposed by the industry sponsors. So that's what we're facing right now. We want you to work on this. Any immediate questions and reactions to that? Could I have a quick poll of who would be interested in applying if just you haven't seen apart from the one challenge? Who would apply to this?
Have you thought about timelines in terms of when you announce when the call will close? 'Cause that's often a common problem for academics when...
Decent enough to put 6 pages together. So
that's a good point. 6 pages.
It's not a 70-page EU project, right? But no, we do similar. So in a lot of the open calls, you have about 2 months after the announcement. So that's probably how we would do that.
Yeah.
The intention is to have most of the projects that we will announce now contracted by the end of the year, which means the applicants, applied, we made a decision. And we get the contract on that by then as well.
And the evaluation of the proposals, how will this be done?
That's the selection committee will do the same thing. So the selection committee is right now we're thinking around 10 people. They may also consult external experts to draw them in as well, similar to open calls. But the selection committee is meant to be the group of people that makes the decision ultimately, like a TPC, but then with potential industry, with potential topic experts involved in that as well.
Question while we were thinking, I was thinking and getting confused. Sponsorship. This is a sponsorship, not a subcontract.
No, that's why we are. So the industry sponsor is sponsoring the DIA,
Okay.
and it has a very, very wide definition of the purpose. And I know that's at least acceptable for Huawei. I'm not sure it would be acceptable for Airbus, but it hopefully would work. The relationship between the applicant and the DIA is a contract because it has real deliverables. You can also, technically or legally, you can call it a sponsorship with dedicated results because you promise deliverables as an applicant. And there will be a review because there will be, this is all in the bylaws, you will read that also on the webpage, so I didn't mean to talk about this. The payments will be done very similar to open calls. You will get one payment initially, and the second payment is based on review. If the deliverables will not be delivered, or the selection committee, which will also review the results and is not satisfied with the results, the second payment is not paid. So that is closer to a contract, but it still runs under the legal term of sponsorship.
That may raise
The thing is, talk. If you want to change some of the language, that's from an industry perspective, we can have a discussion on that.
I will raise 3 issues now. One is the sponsorship that sometimes leads to some kind of conflict of interest, lawyers on the picture, because if you cannot go into the procurement system, there is a problem. Second one, if DIA wants to be contracted, because DIA will be contracted, DIA needs to be in the procurement system of the company. That takes time. The third one is a conflict of interest. For instance, if I propose sponsorship and then DIA will reply to it, but I'm also a member of DIA, then it's a no-go.
Yeah. This is why I mentioned that one of the forms to do that internally that changes the procurement system is to actually do it as a donation. And that's why the decoupling might help, because the DIA doesn't promise anything to you. And then you can run it as a donation potentially. And at least I know this from other companies, you're not necessarily running through the same process in the procurement system. So let's talk about this, because it has to work across more than one industry member. Right now we are bootstrapping that with Huawei, what works, but we have to, of course, we want to make this work across different industry members. If there's any issue, bylaws are just text, it can be changed. Right? Giuseppe?
For researchers, the fact that DA will retain the copyright of the deliverables, does it impair publishing?
No, not at all. This is really to prevent that somebody is just bluntly ripping off the deliverable and it's never put in. Then we can go after them rather than you go after them. Again, the IP is retained by you, and that of course includes the publication right of it in another publication. That retains with you. It's just that very document, which is the only deliverable you do, or maybe you do 2 of them, I don't know, depending on the project. That is our copyright, so we can put it on our website, somebody takes it and uses it without, attribution, we can go after them. Right.
Doug, you mentioned a few times between your running more like with the EU or foreign bodies. To me, this is more like charity funding rather than research councils. Research councils are funding from public, right? And this to me like charity. this should probably individual researcher have a contract agreement, something with charity body rather than research funding body.
So, between, I mean, the relation between the researchers and the DIA is still based on very, very particular outcomes that charities usually don't do. What I said, the legal relation between the industry sponsors and the DIA may be that of a pure donation, and that goes more towards charity. But that's something we need to discuss. Jens?
Just to add, excuse me, to add to this, in order for payment to a researcher to qualify as a donation and therefore a charity, you cannot be obliged to produce any results.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The relationship between you as the researcher and the DIA is not one of charity.
Exactly.
That is a contract because you're saying he's going to do deliverables and he better does them, because if he doesn't do them, he doesn't get the money. Between the industry sponsor and the DIA, it could be just a donation because there is no promise of return. And if there's no promise of return, donation may work. But again, that depends on the procurement system. Let's have a discussion offline. The thing is, we want to make this work. We want to boot this right now. It's meant to be published, as I said, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. You can read more. But we also, in the background, want to talk to more industry sponsors, to potential industry sponsors, to make this acceptable legally. So again, and bylaws can be changed. It's just text, right? Sorry, one last question, then we need to move on.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions. It's the first one is about the criteria of that selection committee. Is it just about the applicant or the application, or both of them? For instance, you see the history of that researcher that wants to do something to see if it's something related.
So I mean the criteria for being appointed.
Yes.
Right now it's a first call, first serve, and then the board will make an appointment, and it would of course be good if it's related to the area of challenge, which is also why we want the selection committee to also more, potentially after a year change that we flow around. And even if the selection committee feels that the expertise is missing, it can invite other experts to perform the review as well in order to avoid a lack of knowledge.
And my next question is about the deliverables. There should be, for instance, just publications, report documents.
It depends on the challenge. It may be, for instance, it may be a prototype, when actually the deliverable is the copyright on the code that would be done. It could also just combine a publication if the applicant feels that an application is enough, then you promise a publication. If you can convince the selection committee that suffices rather than writing a dedicated deliverable, the publication would be taken instead. It really depends on the cases.
Thank you.
Great. So it's a great new thing. Watch out and send questions if you have any, or comments if you want to improve on it. And thanks Huawei to kicking this off. It's a great new way, and we're not even a year old, and we're already doing something we thought we would be doing next year or something. Very good. Now we start with the actual working groups. So we start, remember the diagram, we have the horizontal working group, SET, System and Technology. We start with that, and then we'll have the two vertical ones we heard in the morning, but you will hear the activities that those working groups are doing, railway and aerospace.